All right, Roger, take it away, buddy.
All right, Admiral, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, we got you. Well, good morning, everyone. So delighted to have you with us. Could we just go around? Just go around real quick and just introduce yourselves to Admiral Fox, and here we go. Oh my goodness, we have something over here. Are you there? We go. Okay, good. So could we just kind of walk around here? So Dr. Geraci, you just want to say hello to Mike Fox.
Hello, Michael. It's Michael Geraci here, Buffalo.
All right.
Good morning.
And
Good morning.
Dr. Sheehan.
Hi, Dan Sheehan from University of Rochester. I also want to do a quick introduction to Tanya Farquharson. She is my collaborator for developing sickle cell lung clinics and research in Rochester. And I just gave her, Roger, your first book.
Oh, wonderful, Tanya. So nice to meet you. So happy to meet you. Yeah.
Yes, nice to meet everyone.
And, well, you're in for a treat today because the Admiral is like ready to go. So, and Kim, to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kimmery McKernan, and I know Mike well. Hi, good to see you again. I do quite a lot of work with Dr. Mishra and the UB School of Medicine, combining creativity and appreciative inquiry, called Positive Creativity.
Thanks, Kim. Dr. Gatewood, good morning, Z. How are you?
Good morning. And good morning, Admiral. I'm a semi-retired cardiologist, although I really pretty much work 10 or 12 hours a day. But you're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, making the air right. So I'm very, very anxious to hear what you have to say this morning. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
I know what you mean about being semi-retired. You can retire anytime you want. You just can't leave.
Tanya, good morning. I'm sorry, Kelly, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good. How is everyone? Thank you for allowing me back. I am a fellowship administrator here at the University of Rochester. Looking forward to today.
Great, good, welcome. And Tanya, so good to have you with us. You want to just say a couple of words?
Good morning. Sorry, I'm driving. I'm the Director of Accreditation and Quality Improvement at the Jacobs School of Medicine.
Wonderful. And Dr. Roman, Brenda, how good, so good to see you. Can you say hello to us?
Yeah, I can say hello. It's great to be back.
Great to have you back. And so just on a personal note, Dr. Roman was the Associate Dean at my daughter's medical school, Boonshot School of Medicine. And Maria graduated April 30th, and she got married this weekend, May 20th. It was a beautiful wedding. Father of the bride is so happy. And so they're on their way to Greece. They should be in Greece by now. So Brett, it's so great to see you again. Wow, this is fantastic. So just a couple of things, just want to mention to you that we are working on the certificate program for leading innovation teams. That is ready to roll. I'm just going to be talking with Dr. Snyder on that. And so we should be looking for some information on how to get involved in that, how to enroll in that, how to make that happen. So so we'll just keep you posted. You folks are going to be the first to know on that. So so I'd like to just begin here by welcoming our guest speaker here today. I want to tell you a little bit about him. So in 1995, so a little bit about how we got here. Our last meeting, Michael Leonard talked about and Robert talked about how do you make the air right, and making the air right is establishing the climate for creativity in organizations. Michael has done an amazing job with that. I've known Michael. Michael was one of my students back in 1984. 85. Okay, good. His nickname is Admiral Fox, and the reason why I call him that is because of the shirts he wears, okay? Because it's his Tilly shirts for his epaulets there. But a little bit about this. In 1995, Michael Fox was hired as the director of the Ketchikan, Alaska Seaport. And when Mike accepted the position, the seaport had less than 2 weeks of operating funds. using what Mike learned in his master's science degree in creative studies here, he created an environment that nurtured the creativity of the staff, increased the efficiency of operations, made the airport a safer place to work, and turned to healthy profit. And when we talk about making the seaport a safer place to work, Mike is dealing with barges full of propane and dynamite and other kind of scary things like that.
Yeah.
Pretty important stuff. So Mike's going to talk about the specific things he did to develop a creative climate and create a profitable organization. A little bit about Mike. Mike was a senior lecturer at the Center for Applied Imagination at Buffalo State University, where he taught graduate and undergraduate courses in the nature of nurture of creativity. He's an author of a number of books on creativity. And Mike Fox's background is diverse. He's been an executive, a landscape architect, a prairie restoration consultant, a chef, wait a minute, that's his wife, an author, and an airline pilot, used to fly for Northwest. During the Vietnam War, Mike was a helicopter pilot who was shot down and rescued twice. Thank you. And in his spare time, Mike does museum quality restorations of antique aircraft. So as we begin, Michael, thank you so much for your service. And please just let her rip. And also, folks, Michael is an amazing storyteller. So please tell us the story about the Ketchikan Seaport, what you did to make it profitable, what you did to get people involved, what you did to make it a creative organization. So, Admiral, over to you.
All right. For those that are to build rather on the epaulets here, this shirt is what I wore when I was flying for the National Geographic Society. And the shirt never wears out, so I keep on wearing it. Ah, gosh. The backstory, I was a planner for Ketchikan, Alaska, and I helped with the development of the city of Saxman, which was about 2 miles away from Ketchikan itself, Ketchikan being the 4th largest city in Alaska at 7,300 people. Well, Loring was a little smaller. It had 26 people. Anyway, I am dying here. You got to give me a little feedback.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Anyway,
We're good.
So I was asked to attend a council meeting at the city of Saxman, this native city just a mile or two away from Ketchikan. And I had been their planner for quite some time. And I showed up at the council meeting when I looked around and I was the only one there. Usually in a Native American council meeting, everybody shows up. And so I looked around and said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Well, we just hired you." I said, "But I have a job." And then they offered me more money than God has. And so I decided I'd take it. And my title, my official title, was the general manager of the seaport, which in a municipal corporation means that I was a chief operating officer. And so I took the job and showed up for work and discovered that there were some things that I should have asked about. I remember seeing an old coffee cup mug with a picture of a caricature of an old wizened cowboy, and the statement with it was, there were a lot of things they didn't tell me when I hired onto this outfit. And so I discovered, for example, that I had 2 weeks of operating capital left. Oh my God. I mean, you turn on the lights for a day and that's $1,000. Anyway, and when I talk to my people, I say, "Hey, we've got a barge coming in," because everything is on a seaport as comes in on a barge, and it's coming in at 2:30 in the morning. So who's going to take responsibility for unloading the dynamite that comes on that barge at 2:30 in the morning? and nobody was interested unless they got a lot of extra pay. And I thought, this isn't good. And it had that same situation with people, no matter what their job responsibility was, avoiding the stuff that said, I have to work at night. So I said, this is going to change. And then shortly after that, there was a casual a person who was responsible for checking on the gate and all that kind of stuff at the seaport at night. And he called me up, and it was like 3 a.m. And he said, there's water running down the steps out to the outside. And I said, why are you calling me? And he said, because you're the only one that would answer the phone. So I decided, this is going to change. And the next Monday morning, well, I talked to each individually about, what do you see as your responsibilities, and what do you see as what you would really like to do? Clearing the air there, getting it ready. And turns out, I instigated a program where I said, as I do my management by walking around, I expect to see you reading the Ketchikan Daily News, because if you don't know what's going on in your community, you're not that much use to me and the seaport. And so I said, when I'm walking around, there ought to be a time every day when I see you on company time reading the newspaper. They didn't believe that at first. And then I said, what is it that you would like to do that would modify your job? And one person said, well, I'd like to be part of that mountain rescue team for when all the visitors come into Ketchikan, decide to go up the mountain and then get lost. And my operations manager said, what I'd like to do is to build docks. And so it went. And I said, so here's what we're going to do. Each person is going to develop professionally so that you have more enjoyment about your job. And then I want to see you reading whatever journal or professional development document that comes with this new thing you want to do. And I said, I better see you looking at that stuff when I manage by walking around. And the next part was, what is it that you would like to volunteer as? And my bookkeeper said, oh, I always thought it'd be fun to be in advertising. And I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's our advertising budget for 6 months. Go figure out what can happen in 6 months and come back to me and tell me how successful or not that you've been. I said, please make a lot of mistakes, because if you're not making mistakes, you're not being creative. And then the fellow said, I really like that mountain rescue stuff. I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to provide for you at seaport cost the equipment necessary to do the job. And so it went. And then, then I said, and I'm going to give you paid release time so that you can do whatever it is that you need to do for volunteers' sake. And I said, so you get 2, perhaps 3 hours a week of paid time to go to school. I'll pay you for your books or your tuition or something else that we can negotiate, whatever it might be. And the end result was that when I treated them like human beings with real goals, with real interests, and I said, we've got to make this seaport work better. We had a meeting every Monday morning. The seaport was closed from 8 to 9, where we would sit in the great room, and I would have a couple of flip charts up, and I would say, this is how much money we made last week. And the other one was, and this is how much money we spent last week. What might we do with your skills to improve that? Well, when it was all over and they actually saw this occurring, that I really meant what I said, which included make a lot of mistakes, because if you're not making mistakes, you're not being creative. And we're up here for creativity is pretty darn important. And I said, there's no penalty for making a mistake. If you take a look at Tom Watson, who was the CEO for IBM years ago, he said, if you want to be creative, you have to double the number of mistakes you make. And I believe that. So anyway, it was about a month that went by once they found that they could do other things besides their primary job, and they could volunteer for things, or I paid for it, and so on. When it came to let's unload the dynamite rail cars at 2:30 in the morning, people would volunteer. Oh yeah, I can do that. When it came to the propane, all the propane for Southeast Alaska came through our seaport, big rail cars. And they would coming in at an odd hour. People would volunteer. Oh yeah, I could do that. And the problem that we had, and this is the pivotal situation, was that when boxcars full of dynamite come in on a barge, the federal law says that from the moment the barge touches ground, all the dynamite has to be in federally approved magazines. So if it comes in at 4 in the morning, you got to unload the thing. And then when we have dynamite and propane on the same railroad tracks that went through our seaport, if somebody makes a mistake, we're going to have urban renewal on a really interesting scale. But anyway, the end result, and this is the clearing the air and making sure, is that to solve the problem of getting people to work at bizarre hours without having to pay them a whole bunch of money, if I treat them like human beings that can extend their professional experiences, and this was for everybody, from my operations manager down to the people that clean the toilets, everybody, once they saw that this is really working, I didn't have any problem after that. And in the first year, I doubled the profits. In a year and a half, I created 53 new jobs, practically employed all the able-bodied men in the city of Saxman. So there you go. That's my story. Do you have any questions?
All right, folks, let's open it up for questions. Michael, thank you. Questions about how he created that climate for innovation, how he got people involved, how he doubled the profits. And Mike is a wonderful storyteller about this. So give him a direction, and here he goes. So what questions do you have, particularly from the situations that you folks are all in, because we're facing that. So what have we got?
So that's a wonderful, wonderful story, and it sounds much like what it's called servant leadership. It is really recognizing your employees as humans and developing them in ways that you need them to do, but also serving them and allowing them to develop in the ways that they want to do. As I thought about what you were doing as far as walking through where you worked, it made me think about the past 3 years where we've lost a lot of connections. And now that people are hybrid, it's really challenging to keep engagement and so forth. So I'd love your thoughts on what might be all the ways to, in this hybrid world that we work in, or this remote world that we work in, how do you keep engagement and connection?
Yeah. First off, what I ensured that I passed on to them was they need to develop professionally as human beings. And then when they decided what it is that they wanted to do that would benefit themselves as individuals, every Monday morning, we would have a reoccurring experience that said, well, what do you like about what you did? And then I would ask another question, and what would you like to do more of? And then we get a discussion going. And then I would say, and what would you do less of if you could do this over again? And the next question was, what might you do differently? And then finally, is there anything that surprised you? Well, this, when you level the playing field like this, folks are saying, well, yeah, this is authentic, but you have to keep doing it. This is authentic, and I like what I'm doing, and I like the support that I'm getting. Did that actually answer your question?
You absolutely did. And my question is were you doing this during the COVID, as well as are a lot of your employees hybrid now? And how do you do something like what you've done in a hybrid world?
Okay, this was before COVID struck, but by the same token, I'm dealing with Alaskans, and they're peculiar. That's why they live there. And anyway, if I had been there during COVID, it would have been the same thing. Let me back up. I have 3 rules in life. Rule number 1, you must take care of yourself first. Rule number 2, then you must take care of your family. And rule number 3 is, and everything else comes after that. Now, Kim's probably heard me say this when I was teaching, and she was one of my students. And I said things like, you know, if you're out on the interstate and it's snowing and the interstate becomes a parking lot, don't worry about coming to class. We're not doing anything. It's so important that we can't recover it in some way. You're still responsible for getting the work done. That's always the case. But there are ways in which we can do this. And I live my life, and I expect my employees to live their lives according to my 3 rules. And I reinforce that on a regular basis. Did that help?
It did. It did.
It takes a lot of interaction, a lot of energy to be a facilitative leader, to be a servant leader. And the idea is, what is the point in the organization? What's their job? What's the goal? The dream with the date attached, and keeping that in mind helps me and helps them to see that we're in this together. If we treat each other like real human beings, it's going to work out. Oh, I also gave them all a raise.
Because you were making more money, right?
Yes.
Yes. So Kelly, you've got some things in the chat here. Do you want to just kind of bring those up to the group? You got some great stuff, and kind of toss it out there. And then we'll go over to Dr. Gatewood. So Kelly, let's tell us what you're talking about in the chat, and toss it over to Mike. So
Sure. I kind of want to, along with what Dan was saying originally, that it's fantastic, showing that you value those working for you, and it allowed not only them to flourish, but because they were flourishing, the business flourished. So, you know, creating that environment where, you know, if you succeed, then we all succeed, which I think is, you had a great example there. But I think it's also really important to note that accepting failure and mistakes and even encouraging them allowed for this air that perfection wasn't required. You reinforce that mistakes are natural and normal. And, you know, I think especially in medical education, in many areas, you know, that reinforcing that mistakes happen. And, you know, if you're not making them, then you're not doing it right. I think that's great. A great reminder.
Thank you. Here's something I learned 30 years ago when I was a midlife career enhancer, much like Kim, when she came into graduate school. Roger was my instructor. And he said, you know, you ought to have a mistake quotient. So I gave myself 30 mistakes a day, and I would have that on my flip chart in my office, and I would have the letters MQ followed by 30. And when I would make a mistake, I'd draw a line through 30, 29, and 28, and so on. And I have lived my life like that, and I still do it. You make it. So when a real humdinger of a mistake happens, it doesn't hurt as much.
Nice. Thanks, Michael. Robert, you had your hand up there, so go for it.
Yeah, I certainly enjoyed hearing your story, Admiral. You hit on two I guess beliefs that I share. One is, and I tell my kids this all the time: do what you're passionate about. And I think it sounds like you gave your employees a chance to do something that they're really passionate about. And the other thing I would say is, I tell my students, as they're learning anyway, that it's okay to make a mistake. In fact, we learn more from our mistakes than from what we do right. Now, the problem is, once, and this is where I'd like to hear your advice, once we get into practice, you know, physicians are naturally risk averse. We don't want to make a mistake because, you know, there's a patient at the other end. And so how do you allow for mistakes when you are treating patients? What are some of the ways, and how would you guide us on that? And also, now in medicine, things are getting so big. When you were working in Ketchman, you had a relatively small audience. Now we have these multi-hospital organizations, and physicians are kind of, and staff are kind of lost in this huge, you know, 10,000 employee corporations. How do you bring your way of overseeing, you know, or managing to a large organization like that?
Interesting question. My first response is, you're right up to your eyeballs in a conundrum. Anyway, changing the environment conducive to productivity and creativity, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a long slog. It took me 2 years to change the seaport. And you do it by modeling the way. And part of that is to say that you're going to be authentic. And that's hard. And then the next part is grit is required. And grit is really, are you interested in what you're doing? Has it turned into a passion? And are you persistent in changing the press, as we call it, the environment that's pressing in on you, that helps or hinders? If you expect to do it overnight, of course, that won't occur. And modeling the way seems to be a good posture to take. We did some research with a retail outfit, and said, how many people at the same level where you are is, can you help make a change? And we found about 7 people, either way of center for the person who's modeling the way, seems to have an effect when you do, in fact, model the way. By the time you get to the 8th person at that same level as you are beyond, that's questionable. Moving up, this is the hard part. Moving up, you really have to work with the next person or group that you report to, and that's a tough slog. Moving down, we get a few people, maybe 4 or 5, but beyond that, it's tough. So the research that I conducted, it was one of those. It's small. It's small that well, we predicted that if the organization did not change its environment, they would probably go out of business. About 6 years later, it did, because they didn't change. They didn't want to. Not a happy story.
Hmm.
It's small.
So what you're saying is working in small units is kind of the way to go after this, Michael?
Yeah, yes. And the expectations have to be long range. It's not going to happen in a month or perhaps even a year unless you have a real champion or you are the champion. It's hard.
Brenda, you've got your hand up. Go. You're muted, Brenda.
Sorry, just to follow up on that aspect of as medical education is becoming more of a business too. Unfortunately, it really is. That the challenges are greater, and I definitely agree that, modeling creativity and allowing people to take risks, because that's the way you grow and that's the way the organization then grows, is absolutely fabulous. And when I was at Boonshoft, we certainly in our instructional methodologies, we fostered the growth mindset that, it's okay to make mistakes because, as you said, that's where you learn the most.
Mhm.
And I think what we tried to do was, especially the preclinical education and the clinical education, is you're talking about patients and trying to figure things out. That's when you make mistakes, because you don't want to do it with a real patient for obvious implications. But the challenge that we encountered was new leadership coming in and not sharing that same vision. And then the individuals in my department, me included, not being valued for, wanting to promote that environment of creativity. Let's think outside the box. We can, be some of the leaders in medical education. It was back to more what was considered kind of tried and true. Let's just give them the lectures that they think they want. Whereas the science of learning shows that lectures are a horrible way to learn.
Right.
And so I think that's the conundrum. And in my professional national network, I'm unfortunately hearing more and more stories of leaders coming in and looking at medical education much more as a business instead of a opportunity to really make an impact on the next generation of physicians, in which they will take a different approach to not to really lifelong learning, you know, to foster the asking of why questions and not just accepting the status quo. And I realize, I mean, that's so tough. You can manage down and, you know, try to foster that within your group, but you know, if your department or whatever still doesn't feel valued from the top, then it's a major challenge. And I mean, unfortunately, it's a challenge that, at least my experience was that we lost. You know, there's been a mass exodus of faculty and staff. In, you know, by my count, there's been about 25 core faculty and staff directly related to the support of undergraduate medical school education in just a couple of years.
You were
So
right about
any thoughts? I mean, I know there's no easy fixes, but as you know, I guess I just, you know, that's a case study, I think, in more what not to do. But but hearing more and more places that are experiencing similar changes. I mean, I really do wonder, you know, what is being encouraged out there that, you know, deans and provosts and not all, you know, by any means, but that this is the way to go about, you know, management of a huge enterprise. And I've heard the same things in hospital systems too, where the bottom line is much more, I mean, yes, yeah, you have to stay financially solvent, but the bottom line is much more about that than the individuals that are a part of the organization.
Was there another comment from, I saw a hand up.
So Michael, let me just jump on that for just a second. If you want to respond to Dr. Roman's comment on that, but also Brenda, I want to let you know that next month we're going to have Dr. Laree Kiley with us. And Laree was with the Marshall School of Business. She's going to be talking about systems and influence. And this would be one of those areas where I think this will really come in, not only influencing down, but influencing up as well. And so June 22nd will be on there. And her big thing is, you know, thinking in systems, which is one of our things, Robert, that our good friend Ken Snyder and is very, very interested in. But also her work really focuses on influence as well. So, Mike, if you want to respond to Brenda, but if not, we will pick that up in June when Laree comes in, because she's worked in, and she's actually working in medical situations. Like right now, she's working with with the state of California, most of the major clinics there, and really right in the whole medical areas. So come back for that for sure on the 22nd. So yeah. And let's go to, so Michael, if you want to pick up on that, and if you want, we can go right over to Robert. So
yeah, hey, Robert.
Yeah, go ahead, Robert. Yep.
Oh, I thought Michael was gonna.
Well, I was going to build, but
no, go ahead and build. Yeah,
Well,
go ahead and build.
I was just gonna dovetail on what Brenda said. That's what I'm, you know, I'm a newbie at this, teaching the medical students, and I have to admit, I've been a little disappointed so far. It is a little bit entrenched in old sort of standard stale types of, you know, teaching, and we have ways of making it so much more vibrant, but I don't know what it is, but and maybe Brenda, you can tell me, you know, I think the medical schools, the way they are ranked sort of influences how they conduct things. And, you know, it's all about papers and research and all this sort of stuff. And they haven't really addressed the real needs in our community. And I actually, I share your feelings about the students. I think they want to see change. In fact, I encourage them. I said, you guys are going to be the agents of change, because it's not going to come from us old guys. It's going to come from you, and you've got to lead the way. So I'm really hoping that, and maybe Michael, if you have any suggestions on how we can encourage or give the students the opportunity to really make those types of changes, because it's a very sort of top down kind of that's my impression, any top down kind of a management, which is it's very stifling, unfortunately.
Several points there. One, you're starting in the right place. Working with Roger Firestein is one of the best things that you can do. Yeah, all hail Roger.
This is not a paid announcement. Okay, Michael.
Anyway, that's taking a proactive first step. And it takes a long time because you're saying a need to change the culture. And the culture change takes a long time. When we look at the literature on leadership, we see that anywhere from 60 to 90% of the change agents are the leaders, all right? Which that sounds like that's their problem. But if it's 60 to 90%, that means 40 to 10% is something else, and it's you. So, oops. So it means that you have to be the leader, and from where you are, influencing on down. And ultimately, it changes the culture. I know that leadership, when I see it, I agree with the articles that talk about 90% of it is the so-called leader, but somewhere in there, you're responsible too. Oh gosh, that didn't really answer your question.
Well, it's such a complex issue, and maybe what Robert said, and perhaps this can be another topic of conversation. Is I really think our accreditation body is partly what stifles both the creativity as well as well, it just simply stifles the creativity and the willingness to have faculty and leaders do things differently, because we're so afraid of the students liking it or not liking it. And the students, and again, this is part of the challenge of medical education. Most of us, or at least several of us who are physicians, when we went to medical school, the volume of material was great, but the volume of material is even greater now. And and the length of time in medical education has not changed. And so yet much of how educators approach it is much the same. And I think they're now, to give credit to the licensure exams, they are trying to go back to what the original intent was. And that is to show that if somebody passes, then they're fine to be a physician. They just started being used in a way to stratify applicants for residency. And then that naturally, becomes the focus of the medical students. And so they're really caught in the middle of, yeah, I would like to potentially do things differently, but I need to get all of this information in me so that I can do well on these licensure exams. And the medical schools are so afraid to do anything differently because the accreditation system is more focused currently on whether or not a student likes their experience versus outcomes.
Yes.
And so maybe that would be a good topic at some point, Roger, for this group too.
Got it.
When I was the chief operating officer of the seaport, I recognized that I was a fiduciary. The last thing that I wanted to do was to be a fiduciary because you have to be responsible. I didn't want to be responsible. So I decided that for the group of people that I had some influence over, and this is key, that I would model the way, and time after time after time, and it worked. Now, the structure and the outcome of this is quite different than medicine, other than if you have a bunch of dynamite and propane and somebody hits it with a big forklift, you don't have any more problems. that's them. So there is a downside. So I can't speak to specifically the case of what do you do in medicine other than lead the way for the core people, and over time, with persistence and interest and all that sort of thing, why change will occur. Yeah, that sounds like, oh, a wonderful thing, but I'm not going to live long enough. Right? No, I don't know what to do with that.
Robert, you have your hand up over there in that. Yeah. Robert, you're muted. You're mute. Robert, you're muted. You're muted, Robert. Can't hear you. Oh, see, there's that look. Oh, I'm muted. Good. Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up on what Brenda said about education again. And I apologize if I've said this before at one of these meetings, but let's see, 1970, when I started medical school, medical knowledge was doubling every 50 years. In 1980, when I started practice, medical knowledge was doubling every 8 years. And in 2020, medical knowledge was doubling every 73 days. So to Brenda's point,
right.
Yes, and that's one of the things we try to drive into our medical students is that we want you to love learning, because this is going to be a lifelong venture. Things are going to change, and so you've got to enjoy learning and also enjoy teaching. You're lifelong learners and you're lifelong teachers. So we want you to be passionate about that, and that's why I think building a curriculum over those 4 years and then residency is so important, because you don't want to dampen that passion for learning more and teaching. It's so important. It's critical to your long-term professional career.
Go ahead, and then we'll jump on that. Yeah.
What you're talking about is grit, and grit has 3 parts. One, there has to be genuine interest to build into passion, and then there has to be persistence. Well, this is also you, in terms of you're the change agent. Oh, lucky you. You're the change agent, and it will not happen quickly.
Good. Yeah, Kim, go ahead. And then we'll take Kim and then we'll do a little wrap up. So Kim, please go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to share everyone an amazing experience I had working with Dr. Mishra, using positive creativity to help residents select their field. And in the past, it was very much, this is what I don't want to do. And there was a lot of negativity around it. And then we're also, like you said, facing this time where I may like to do surgery, and going forward, it's going all robotic, so I won't be doing it, right? So we talked to folks that are in a field and about why they loved it. And then we did some strength mapping with the students and had the opportunity to talk about what they loved and what their strengths were and how that's a match. And that session was so inspirational to me because you really saw the light bulb go on, right? Where that passion began. That was going to be a lifelong passion.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was a stretch for the students though, because that isn't the way they did things in the past.
Well, and I think, you know, if we kind of take a look at about how we got this group formed, it was really around this whole area of, you know, changing medical education and infusing creativity into that. And the work that you're doing with Archana Mishra, with Appreciative Inquiry, the work that we've done with Ken's group. And so we are beginning, and it's going to take a while, but as Michael says, and you know what I'm really devoted to here is considering that you know my little girl just got her degree. Yay. Brenda, stay on afterwards. I want to catch up with her, but you know, there's a real passion there as far as, you know, dealing with the whole medical area. And with my good friends here that I'm talking to, you know, we're going to move this forward. And so, so that's the purpose of these meetings, and that's the purpose of bringing this together. That's the purpose of this new training program that we're doing, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But that's why we're here, and that's why, Michael, I really appreciate you coming in and bringing your perspective about how you did this in a high-risk organization where you have dynamite and propane and all those things happening, and getting people up at 2:30 in the morning to bring that stuff in, and really kind of from your perspective of how to do that. You know, it's a different organization, you know, but it's still an organization that we're dealing with. So we're still dealing with people working hopefully toward a common goal. And the further I get into the whole medical area, I'm understanding more and more the conundrums that you dear folks face. And so let's work through that. So that's kind of where my passion is around this and where I'm going with this. So just a couple of things before we end today. One, I've mentioned this before, but what we're in the process of doing right now is creating a certificate in leading innovation teams program. And I will send you the link out onto that with a little video on that. And this is originated with the work that Ken Snyder and I spoke about, and that Dan Sheehan's interested in, and Robert, you're interested in. Essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to create I'll be teaching a program. First one is on applied creative thinking, and we'll do it. We can do it remotely, Brenda. So this might be something that you folks might be interested in. We can also going to do part of it in person at the Roycroft near Dan's place out there. The second part will be how to facilitate lead innovation teams. That will be an in-person event, in-person program that we'll be teaching. So we're just rolling this out. And the reason why I'm doing this, guys, is because we have the master's degree in creative studies at Buffalo State. Unfortunately, the barriers to get into that for professional folks like you folks is just kind of ridiculous. You do not need to submit your transcripts to try and get this, you know, come on, you know. And so that's where we're at with this. And so we're going to take this knowledge, we're going to take it, we're going to get it out to folks. And so just stay tuned on this. We're going to get it rolling. Michael, I know you're interested in this. And so Kelly, this is something that might be interesting to you folks as well. So I'll send you the link out on that so you can kind of know what's going on with that. We'll keep you apprised on that. So to talk before Michael, any other final comments with Michael? And then I want to just tell you what's coming up in June. Admiral, yeah.
I enjoyed meeting you all. And I hope that my experience in the private sector provoked your thinking. And by the way, you're starting in the right place.
Michael, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bravo, Michael. Bravo.
Okay.
June 22nd is our next meeting. I've talked to Dr. Laree Kiley about this. Laree does work in systems thinking, and her whole session will be on thinking in systems. You'll be getting her bio very soon. And I think you'll find her background really, really, really interesting. So June 22nd, David will get that announcement out to you. So any other comments from folks? So Brenda, if you and David could stay on for just a minute. So Michael, thank you for taking your time out of your day. Good to see you all again. We'll plan on seeing you on June 22nd for our next meeting of the Buffalo Society for Creativity in Medical Education. So go out, do great things. We'll keep you posted. Thanks, everybody.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
day,
Michael.
everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mike. Great to see you.
Oh, you're
Thanks,
welcome.
Mike.
You're welcome.
All right.